one time I was in St. Lucia, and my companion and I had been tracting, knocking doors in a certain area, and we had sat down and we had taught an older guy. He was probably like 55, maybe. He wasn't that old, and his daughter, she was about 20. We'd sat and shared a lesson with them. They liked it, and they said we could come back. And I called back in about a week, and they said it was actually his wife that answered the phone. And I asked for him. I said, is he there? And she said, well, you haven't heard. And I said, what? No, I haven't. And she said, well, he's dead. And I was like, okay, well, we're very sorry about that. Maybe if we could come by, in a week or so, after the funeral and everything being taken care of, we'd like to share a message with your family about Jesus Christ. She said, yeah, that'd be fine. And so a couple weeks had gone by. We tried to call and nothing had really happened. And then it was one of my last days on the island that I was there. I was on trade-offs with another missionary, and he and I were just walking through the area, and I said, you know what, let's go try her one more time. And she was there, and we just sat down and spoke to her. And one question that I like to ask in lessons was, if you had any question that you could ask God and he would give you a direct answer right here and now, what would you ask him? And naturally feeling a lot of grief that she was about the death of her husband, she said, why do good people have to die? And that was a tough question. I wasn't sure what I was going to say to that because I didn't really know. But then the thought came by the Spirit, and I shared this, and my companion kind of bore testimony. But what I asked her was, I said, does anybody have a right to ask that more than God? He who gave his son, who was perfect, who had never done anything wrong, and who had no right to be killed or to die. He was the only innocent person who ever walked the earth, the only person completely free of sin, the person who more than anybody else deserved not to die. And he had to die. He had to be sacrificed for us. So doesn't God have that question? Doesn't he have the right to ask that question of us? And she was in tears, and just obviously really feeling the Spirit, testifying to her that God did love her. And that was what we really did. We said, we know that this is hard, and it's hard to lose somebody that you love so much, but God sacrificed his only son for you. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him might not perish, but have everlasting life. And my companion bore testimony of that, and it was one of the strongest experiences I had had. I did not get to follow up with her. I left the island soon after that. I never heard if she was able to continue taking the lessons or if she was ever baptized, but that was something that happened very, very often on the mission, is that God sent us to testify to his children that he loves them. Regardless of whether they accepted our message or not, he put us right there to be able to reach out to one of his daughters who was hurting a lot because she had lost her husband. That was definitely one of the most spiritual experiences on my mission.